Wow. Happy February, everybody. Oh my goodness, we're back. And I'm so excited. And I say this every episode, and I say that every episode, but I truly am that excited every time we have an episode. So, welcome to the Voxsana podcast. It's all about voice in all facets. So, speaking, writing, and singing, and the voice all encompassing mind, body, soul, and all that jazz. So, it's super cool to watch these connections happening in this giant web of voice that we all have. And every episode, I try to demystify a part of the voice. So today is all about the speaking voice, but in more facets than you might think. So a lot of us think of public speaking right away, but we're actually talking about voice as well as our everyday voice. So the voice you use to talk to your family, ask your boss for a raise, all those things, right? The easy things that we say to people, the loving things, and the difficult things, and what that does to our voice, and how everything is all interconnected. So it's pretty jazz oriented. I'm just so jacked. I don't even know what I'm talking about at this point. Here we go. So my guest today is Brendan from New York Speech Coaching, and we talked to Justin a few weeks ago, and actually a few months ago now. Justin Stoney from New York Vocal Coaching. So this is the speech department from his company, and I'm just thrilled. So let's talk about Brendan and bring him on and ask all of our burning voice questions because I have a lot. I'm selfishly going to ask him everything I've ever wanted to know. So here we go. Brendan. Brendan is a senior instructor at New York Speech Coaching. His coaching combines an intricate knowledge of anatomy and physiology with a background in philosophy. Fascinating. He is passionate about teaching effective business communication, executive presence, and vocal production, equipping clients with control and flexibility to present themselves professionally and authentically. His training covers not only the technical aspects of speech production, but also presentational performance and perspective work. There is so much jazz I could say about Brendan. Please read the show notes, but let's just jump ahead here to Brendan specializes in corporate training as well, with an emphasis on fundraising, pitch decks, sales calls, presentation delivery, and negotiation and persuasion tactics. His clients come from, get this, Google, Disney, Forbes, and there's Amazon in there too. There's so much we can say. Brendan, I want to bring you on because I don't want to talk the whole show without you. So without further ado, here's Brendan. Hi.
Hi, Jill.
Hello,
Thanks for
hello.
having me.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I'm going to pop this up here. So I want to dive right into everything and anything I've ever been wondering about voice. But the one thing that really strikes me with you is your combo that you teach anatomy, physiology, and philosophy. This is
Mhm.
going to be a big question, but I want to know how you came to bringing philosophy into this voice conversation because I think that's the key element here, and
Yeah.
what that looks like for you in with a client when you're working together.
Mhm. Too many interests and too much time on my hands, I think is how that happened. The long story short there is I went to school for a few different things. I got my
Yeah.
master's in speech language pathology, but I
Mhm.
also got a bachelor's degree in philosophy and religious studies. So all these books you see behind here, everyone thinks this
Love
is a
it.
virtual background. It is my real home here. But you have your philosophy and religious studies stuff on one side, and you have your speech stuff on the other side. And so I had these loves, I had these passions, as well as a passion for performance. I'm a musician. And combining
Excellent.
all of those together, I found that there were these common threads that went throughout all my interests because,
Ooh,
as you somewhat hinted at, they seem pretty disparate at
right?
first. When you think about philosophy and then doing corporate speech training, those seem disparate. But at the core of it, I found that these things are pretty integral to what makes us human. The
Yeah.
ability to communicate, the ability to express ourselves through art, and to think about these deeper questions in life. I found them to be at the core of our humanity, and I combine them all in my work.
Oh, isn't it fascinating how it's almost like life no, it's not almost. I feel like life has this amazing, guidance for us and all these things that seemed, your schooling where you just change trajectories, but it's all connected. So you didn't really there was a greater purpose for everything. I just find that fascinating when we can connect the dots like that. Like,
Oh, exactly. And I'll say
man,
something brief
no.
about that.
Yeah.
When I was in school, it was this challenge of going, what do I want to do? Because we
Yes.
have this idea in our culture that You have one career path, one thing, and you better choose it by the time you're 21. Otherwise, you've lost, right? And for me, it was through all of these things, I decided to begin with the speech pathology career, and I'm very grateful that it's opened up all of these other doors to do these other things.
Mhm. And I just love that, like we just talked about, you can incorporate all your knowledge into your speech, lessons with folks, so that's fascinating. Tell me, Brendan, about your journey, with voice specifically. So you said you're a musician, but I wanna know what came first, like the nerding out about the speaking voice or music, or how does that look for you? I'm always fascinated to hear how people came to what they do and passionate about.
Yeah, it was
Big
the
question.
performance first, however,
Yeah.
lifelong nerd as well. And when I was growing up, I was nerding out on everything that exists, really being a performer, but also talking nonstop, which is why, Jill, when you said, "Hey, do you want to get on a vodcast?" I said, "Yes, talking is what I want to do all the time anyway." When I was growing up, they said, "You should get a job where you talk for a living." And so I did, and that's why I'm here. But it really was that
Perfect.
performance piece that came first. And
Yeah.
it evolved from there. And I
Yeah.
learned about the world of speech language pathology. And I realized so I can talk all day, I can talk about talking all day, and I can help people in the process. Sign me up. I'm in.
Right? Oh my gosh. I see the passion from you, and in your videos, I'm loving it. I've watched them already a few times, and I watched them all again last night because I was like, "These are great. These are so great." It just makes the voice so accessible to folks. Um,
Yeah.
so here's where I wanna go today is, giving folks real life tips for their voice, but also demystifying a little bit about how it works. So if we
Mhm.
jump in real quick and just in the very most layperson terms, how does our voice actually make sound? What is
Mm,
happening behind the scenes, Brendan? I'd love for you to just like succinctly tell us a little bit about what's going on back there.
yes, and quickly, if I could, you said
Yeah.
give people tips about the voice and demystify how it works. I actually think
Yeah.
that's the best tip is first learn how that voice works. You will
2 thumbs
save a
up.
lot of time because you'll do a lot of things that you think are helping the voice and they're kind of a waste of time. Not to
Awesome.
discourage experimentation, of course, but I think
Yes.
learn
Yes.
how the voice works and that'll help you. And your question was,
Cool.
how does the voice work, right?
Yeah. Like what do we got? We got breath, we got vocal cords, we got
Yeah.
chambers that resonate. What's going on?
Yeah. I think that you can break down the voice most simply into 4 stages. Stage 1, breathing. You take in air and then you spit out air, right? Stage
Mhm.
1. Lots to say about each of these
Yeah.
stages, but that's stage
Yes.
1. Stage 2, once that air starts to leave, it hits these things in here called the vocal cords or the vocal folds, another fancy term for them, same thing.
Mhm.
And so when that air hits those, if they are together close enough, it will blow them back open into vibration. That's stage 2. We call that phonation, is the process of those vocal cords vibrating. But
Mhm.
you'll notice there's no hole right here for the sound to come out, right?
Yes.
Sound comes out of mouth and nose. And
Yeah.
so before it can come out, it bounces around in your throat, in your mouth, in your nasal cavity. And that bouncing around, that's stage 3. We call that resonance. Resonance. And then stage 4, you actually have to move your lips and your teeth and your tongue. We call those articulators. And so you take
Mhm.
that sound wave that you've produced, that you've powered by your breath, that you've
Mhm.
initiated by the buzzing of the vocal cords, and that you've filtered through that resonance. And then you
Mhm.
articulate and you form specific speech sounds. Breathing, phonation,
Awesome.
resonance, articulation, and you have all the words you and I have said today together.
And there you go. Easy, right? So
Easy.
simple.
Why do you need to learn anything else? That's it.
So, my philosophy, and I imagine you have this too, is that we come into the world knowing how to do all this stuff. Like babies don't have an issue being loud or making sounds or breathing or anything like that. And then things get weird. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what are some of the common issues you see from your
Mhm.
clients that And again, no shame in this. It's all learned habits that we've picked up in our life. So it just is what it is. But some of the habits aren't serving us anymore. What are
Mhm,
some of those issues that you see? For example, I know for a lot of people losing their voice or
mhm.
not being able to be loud or heard because they can't project.
Yeah.
What are some things that you're seeing?
Yeah, it's a great point, and a really fascinating thing is if you look at the data and the literature about
Hmm.
voice disorders, and I'm talking particularly about the injury type of disorders, the one we incur, not genetic things or anything of that nature, but
Hmm.
vocal nodule, for example. If you
Yeah.
look at the data, you very rarely see that in babies and extremely, extremely young children. It's really around 4 or 5 where we actually start to see this drastic spike in those sorts of
Wow.
conditions, and they happen
Wow.
more and more into adulthood. So that is
Hmm.
fascinating. There's something going
Hmm.
on there, natural. I won't blow out my voice as a baby, even though I'm crying and screaming all day. And then
Right.
something changes as we develop, as we learn about the way people are communicating around us, right? So that is
Hmm.
a fascinating thing. But as far as the common things I see, it would depend which part of my job we're talking about. So
Fair. Yes.
if we're talking about the speech pathology world, there's a lot of
Yeah.
muscle tension that goes on in that world. A lot
Okay.
of excess use of these external laryngeal muscles. That just means the muscles that attach to your voice box. And
Uh-huh.
we'll see a lot of people exerting a lot of tension from there. And it's one of those
Hmm.
things where it really snowballs on itself, where you use a little bit of tension, you blow out your voice a bit, and then instead of learning how to recalibrate your voice and do it in a healthier way, you double down on that tension and you need more tension to get it out, right? And the voice goes again.
Hmm.
You need more tension to get it out. And so that muscle tension type of dysphonia
Hmm.
is something I see common with the pathology clients. And then
Okay.
as far as the more public speaking clients, the breath and the voice is still a huge part of that because we find that the breath is the thing you can do to
Hmm.
calm yourself. It's the thing you can do to not do the other things that you don't want to do when you're
Yeah.
communicating. And
Yeah.
so breathing, I would say, is not everything. I want to be clear. It's not, hey, just breathe and everything is fixed. But
Yes.
breathing is that core skill that I find people are not tapping into and they're not really focusing on.
Right, right. Let's unpack breathing really quickly. And again, we could have a whole episode, a whole 5 episodes on
Oh,
breathing. But what are some of the common issues that people do with their breathing? Taking in too much air, not enough air, and is it mouth versus nose? What
yeah,
can you kind of give us? Yeah, there's so much. There's so much. It's easy,
so
but
much.
there's so much to it sometimes. So
There's
how demystify for us, Brendan? I love this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think there's a few things that first come to mind. One
Mhm.
would be the style of breath. And what I
Mhm.
mean by that, and you'll see this in a lot of Justin's videos, for example, would be, is it a high clavicular breath? That means using the chest up here.
Mhm.
A lot of things about that that are not the most advantageous, especially the amount of neck tension you get with that
Oh
as you're
yeah. Yeah.
in there, and the hip bone's connected to the leg bone. It's all connected here, right? So shoulders to neck, that can be problematic, right?
Yeah.
Another thing would be the synchronicity between the breath and the initiation of the voice. So what I mean is you inhale, you exhale, you inhale, you exhale.
Mhm.
There's a particular moment in that cycle when it's best to initiate your voice,
Mhm.
meaning you fill up with air, now you have it, so now it's a good time to use your voice. Versus after you exhale, you don't really have a lot of power in the tank anymore, and your voice can sound a bit more like this.
Yes.
So a lot of people are speaking on that residual air, meaning the little bit of
Oh.
air that we have left in the tank after we've exhaled. So
Mhm.
that initiation between the voice and the breath you're using, I would say, is a huge piece.
'Kay.
And thirdly, the amount of air you're using or
Yeah.
not using, that can be another factor.
Yeah. So do we want nose or mouth when we're speaking and singing? Is it the same? Is it different? What are your thoughts on that? I know
Yeah.
everybody sits in different camps, so
Yeah, I'm gonna
what are
give
your
you the
thoughts?
Brendan opinion on this, and
Okay.
it's a little bit of a cheating answer, which is what works best for you, okay? But I
Oh,
will say my perspective on it.
yeah.
The nose is healthier in the sense that it moisturizes the air for you. So if you're finding that you get really dry, it's a great
Mhm.
way to help moisturize the air. Of course, your nose hairs filter out things as well, so it's a healthier way to breathe in that sense.
Mhm.
However, I just don't think it's true that everyone is breathing through their nose every time they speak because the nose, smaller area, to
Mhm.
get the same amount of air in takes longer slash will be noisier if you're doing it. And so most people I've noticed just being objective here as I see this, I look at people, I say, how are they breathing? When
Mhm.
they're talking, they tend to take breaths through their mouth.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very rare that we do this as we're talking. Now,
Mhm.
you might do it when the other person's talking. When you're
Mhm.
talking, my mouth is closed and I'm breathing through my nose. But as I'm communicating, I will take a quick breath through the mouth. So I
Yeah.
personally think that there's a bit of a what are you trying to accomplish? If it's just to live, breathe through your nose. You don't need to breathe through your mouth at that time. It's
Mhm.
healthy. But if
Mhm.
we're communicating and we have to get these quick breaths of air, you're going to get more volume if we do a quick breath through the mouth. And I think that's okay. So, nose when
Yeah.
you can, mouth
Yep.
when you need to would be my preference. But there are differing opinions, and I think whatever works best for you.
Awesome. Oh, there's so many places I wanna go today, but volume, you hit on that. A
Mm,
lot of clients have an issue, and I know this is a huge one because it could be
yeah,
all kinds of things going on blocking that voice of being loud. But let's look at the physiological aspect of it first.
yeah,
What happens in where does the voice resonate? And how do we get that power in our body? It goes through the back end, behind the scenes, but what happens? I know the face is largely in charge of some of this resonance stuff. So,
yeah,
what can you break down for us about volume?
yeah. Like every topic today, could do a
Yeah,
good
I know.
10
Aren't
sessions.
I mean? I'm just like, "Here, 2 sentences, go."
I'll do my best. Well, first off, even before we get to the resonance piece, if you
Yeah,
want to be louder, I'm going to make it the simplest definition possible. You
yeah.
need to use more power. You need more
Mhm,
air. You're not
mhm.
going to get significantly louder just by changing anything else, right? Resonance is
Awesome.
important. We're going to talk about it in 5 seconds.
Mhm.
But first, take in more air and send more air quicker if you want to get a greater magnitude of that sound wave.
Yeah.
Secondly, make sure your vocal folds themselves are operating efficiently. What I mean by that is if they are very, this might have been a term you used with Justin, decompressed, if they're
Yes.
breathy,
Yeah.
that's not going to give you the volume you're looking for. I can use tons of air, but I'm not getting any power, right?
That's what I see a lot of that, actually. More
Exactly.
breath at it, that's gonna do it, and we've missed
That's
that.
right. And so
Yeah.
we need to learn how to actually bring the vocal cords together with a
Mhm,
firmer seal. Now, this can be overdone and we can squeeze, and that's a problem.
mhm.
But instead of this ha, 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 wanting a ah, 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 and that real connection
Ooh,
of those chords there. So
it
now think
makes a
about
huge difference, yeah.
a huge difference, right? And that was the
Mhm.
same amount roughly of air. Ah, 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 same amount of power that I'm giving.
This is
So
so good.
imagine you have power with the breath.
Yeah,
Imagine you have a good, firm connection with the
yeah.
vocal cords. Then we can talk resonance, because resonance will just amplify all of that is going on down there.
Cool,
So
cool.
before we get to resonance, are those two pieces clear?
I love that. Absolutely. This is I could just listen to you all day. Keep going. This is so good.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Yeah. So the last piece there then is the resonance. And
Mhm,
again, there's a lot of nuance here, but I'll give a simple answer. If your
mhm.
resonance is very small and everything is squeezed together, so your mouth is tight, the back of your mouth is really small, the tongue is high,
Mm.
it's not going to be very loud. However, whoa, if I open things up, right?
Wow.
If
Mhm.
there's that huge, sorry for the listeners if that hurt your
No, it was so good.
if we're opening things in the back,
Y Yeah,
dropping the larynx, which you can see,
yeah.
dropping the back of the tongue, there's a little bit of things to suss out with the soft palate because if it's up all the way, you're not getting any nasal resonance, and nasal resonance is actually a good thing. I
Yeah.
think people are thinking that nasal resonance means a nasal sounding voice, and there's a lot
Yes.
of misconceptions
A
there,
lot of confusion.
a
Yeah.
lot of confusion. So
Yeah.
I'll stay out of that conversation for a second. But
Yeah.
in general, if there's more space back there and a little more of an open mouth here, that's
Mhm.
going to help carry the sound even more. So you have the power, you have the good source, so the tone is pure coming in, right? You have a good signal coming in,
Mhm.
and then you amplify it with that resonance.
Oh, simple.
Yeah.
Now there are exercises you
Good
can do to
question.
retrain, but yeah, simple, right? Yeah. Yeah. This is so good, and I want to take a second right now and help people understand the difference between amplified sound and shouting.
Oh,
So, yeah, let's just because a lot of folks are so afraid of sounding like they're yelling
yeah.
because the volume is so and that's probably more so the,
Mhm.
emotional side of being loud,
I
but
wanted
the
to touch
volume.
that, yeah.
Okay, let's go there, go there. So what
Yeah.
can you tell me about shouting versus amplifying and then the emotional side of volume?
Yeah, so shouting versus having a louder projected sound. Think about if you take a song you're listening to. If
Mhm,
you raise the volume on your sound system, the song itself will sound the same. It's just louder. It's just more present.
mhm,
But we probably all have that experience if it's a bad sound system or if the file is corrupted where you make it louder and it starts to get really distorted. It starts to
mhm.
blare. I think that's a good analogy for being louder versus shouting. If
Oh, I
we
love that.
start to hear a, and I want to be careful with this word distortion, that means a lot of things to a lot of people. But if we feel like the quality of your voice changes as it starts to get louder, then we're getting more into that shouty category. And
Mm.
usually, shoutiness tends to be a very open mouth, but almost like this megaphone shape where it's wah, and the back of the tongue and even the larynx can be a little high. Hey is more of a shout versus
Oh,
hey is a bit more of a projected sound, right? And so when you
okay.
get those brighter, shriller, sometimes the vowels are a little bit distorted, they're not as pure. That's when it
Yeah.
starts to sound like a shout.
Mm.
Physiologically, does that one make sense?
So good. Yep. The megaphone example, I'm gonna steal that. That's so
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
So good.
It gets too megaphony, right? So
Yeah.
some is okay, but if
Yeah.
it's going
So, like, relax a little bit, right? A lot of people, when they wanna do something, they wanna do it right, and bless their hearts, they really more effort, and it's like, "Okay, just dial it relax a little bit. Remember there's ease involved in this too. Little babies can do it, right?"
mhm.
So, yeah,
So
totally
often
makes sense.
so often less is more. A lot.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
sometimes more is more, to be fair, so
Yep.
I'll
Yep.
throw that out there.
Yep.
But the psychological piece, I find very, very fascinating. One of the things that has permeated almost all of my work when I'm working with someone one-on-one is the perception piece. There's a
Mhm.
perception that they have, which usually is not how the listener perceives it at all. And so there's this perception they have, and that hinders them from going in X direction because they're concerned about it. So, for example,
Mhm.
it's always my very, very quiet speakers who are the ones most afraid of getting loud.
Mhm.
It's always, I really feel like I'm like shouting at you though.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm going, trust me, we are not even close to
Yeah.
shouting yet. And
Yeah.
in fact, actually shout at me. Give me your shoutiest shout. And this is something I do with almost every area of speaking is let's
Mhm.
learn those extremes safely, of course. But
Mhm.
let's learn those extremes because once people learn the extremes, they can dial in the in-betweens. But I
Mm.
find that it's usually people are afraid to go in X or Y direction, and so they really shift towards the others. And this makes their objective understanding of where they are more of a subjective understanding. They think they're at about 50-50, and they're really
Mhm.
skewed towards one side. So we aim for the opposite,
Mm.
and that's how we can find the middle ground.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, it's true because, from this voice to a loud, boomy voice, that does feel like, oh my gosh, people are going to think I'm mad at them all the time because I'm loud. And so tell me, this is a big one too. We could have six episodes on this, but some of this stuff is the feedback we get as children, correct? And it's, some sounds are acceptable and others aren't. And usually it's the loud ones that aren't. And that's what we've kind of implemented in our program, if you will. Is there anything more you can share about those beliefs and how they might be doing work to your voice that you don't know about?
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah.
First, there's the question of why do I speak the way I do?
Yes.
And there are a few factors in there. This is not an exhaustive list, but one, there are some genetic factors involved.
Hmm.
Two, but less than you think, believe it or not. But there are. Number two, our cultural upbringing. Number three, our family upbringing. Number four, those personal experiences. Someone told you to shut up when you were younger and you internalized that. That's definitely there. And
Hmm.
then I think that's why when we get into speech work and singing work as well, I've found
Hmm.
this to be more in my speech work, but I know it happens in singing too.
Hmm.
We need to have a discussion about what are our values? How do
Oh.
I see myself as a communicator? How do I see myself as a human being? And not what bad things do I do? I mean, who do I want to be? Do I
Mhm.
want to be a person who does walk into the room and is the center of attention? I don't have to be. I don't have to be. But do I want to be? Which is a very different question than have I
Yes.
been,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
saying, okay, someone told you that you should never talk when you were younger. You've internalized that, but do you want to? And if you do, then we can work on that and find your
Mhm.
authentic voice, both
Mhm.
literally and metaphorically.
Yeah. And, sometimes it's so innocent, the feedback we get. Like, maybe you got praised for your quiet play as a kid.
Yes.
And so you're like, "Oh, okay, good, quiet." Right?
Yeah.
So it's not always malicious feedback, but yes, sometimes, kids in the playground aren't the nicest and you get some feedback there and you internalize it and take it with you. And this is the piece where a lot of folks are so scared of changing their speaking voice now because they think that's who they are. But as we're unpacking, it's kind of who you've learned to be in respect. I don't want to, you know, i- insult you. You are who you are, and that's awesome. But there may be some habits there that you've learned and that aren't inherently you that maybe
Mhm,
we can look at dropping. Would you agree
mhm.
with that? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I'm nodding because I thought the other things were big topics. That's a 40 session, a
That's a
40.
40 session. This is my jam. I love this stuff so much. This is why I created this show because this
Yeah,
is the stuff even when I have folks coming in for singing lessons or whatever, they want mum, 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 mums. That's gonna fix the voice,
yeah,
and there's room for that. We
totally.
need that, but without this,
Mhm,
that's just gonna seal what we already have and just get you really
yeah,
good at mum, mum, mums.
and
So
there was something in there that you said that triggered all of these thoughts in my head.
Mm,
The relationship between let me throw out a bunch of words. The
mhm,
relationship between authenticity,
yes,
habit,
mhm,
conditioning,
ooh,
feeling natural,
mhm,
integrity, normal. I can give you a bunch. But these are
yes,
the things you hear, I want to do it without thinking about it. All of those phrases and ideas have this really delicate interplay, this woven web that
yeah,
I think it takes time to undo in people's minds. And so I'll give you one example
mhm,
here. When people come in for singing or speaking, there's often this feeling of, but I want to sound natural, right? I want
yes,
to be natural. And
mhm,
what do we mean by that? And as you said, and I really agree with you here,
yeah,
a lot of times it's just the way we've learned to be, not necessarily consciously. I'm not saying this is a
yeah,
decision.
no,
Just like I slouch a little bit. I didn't consciously choose to slouch. I've
no,
conditioned that over time.
yeah,
Now ask yourself the question, is the slouch the real me? Or is it a
ooh,
way that I've
ooh,
conditioned myself And that's where we need to have that values conversation. Do I want to slouch? And at first, that sounds like a loaded question of course you don't want to slouch. But genuinely, you might not care at all, right?
Right.
And then
Right.
slouch, and you're good. But if
Right.
you slouch and you don't want to slouch, you can actually make changes. And I think people believe, I've seen this when people come in, that the voice is unchangeable.
Yes. Yep.
It's just my eyes are blue. It's like that. You got blue
Yep.
eyes, tough. Shape
Yep.
like you wear contacts, I suppose, but that's not natural if we're doing a conversation, right? And so they think that when the truth is, it's just like slouching. It's
Yep.
a condition, it's a physical alignment that can be shifted. And
Wow.
proof, people do voice impressions and they sound totally different, don't they? So you
Yep.
can take different
Yeah.
sounds out of here,
Right.
and you can find one that is more in line with your personal authenticity.
Oh, this is just so juicy. I love this so much. And our voice is very attached to our sense of self. So it's very threatening to our internal mind to change anything about that, even for the better, even if it's well meaning. So, do you find clients are responsive to this kind of element of the work when you bring it in, or are they resistant to looking at values and emotional sides of? I know that's a very general question, but on the average, what are you seeing?
Yeah, the answer is yes. There are some, of course, who are more resistant to it than others, and understandably so, right? They have a particular
Mhm.
relationship with their
Mhm.
voice. I
Mhm.
find most people, though, I can say, work with me on this today and see what you think. And
Cool.
I can give them personal feedback from my own life and the changes I've made to my voice and how I
Mhm.
feel more of myself than I ever did before those changes.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of great life examples you can use for other things, things that you've changed in your life. It's just helping people to recognize that the voice
Mhm.
is different and that sure, it's uniquely tied to your personality, but it's
Mhm.
not different in the sense that it's just another behavior that you can shape and that you have every right to choose how you
Mhm.
want to communicate.
Mhm. Mhm. There's so much to where I wanna go next is tone,
Mm,
and this is your area of specialty with all your cool videos. But where I wanna go first, because there's a lot of room to play with tone, but what I
yeah.
wanna say first is, how do people know if they've found their authentic sound? The authentic to them sound without any blocks or,
Mhm.
maneuvering going on.
Yeah.
And yeah, just let's just go there first. What are some characteristics that you can look for to figure out if you found your actual voice without the blocks?
Yeah. I might be a bit particular about this more than others in the sense that I don't know if that exists. And what I mean by that,
Ooh.
I
Ooh.
don't know if there is, because inherent to that question is almost the sense that there's the way your voice is supposed to be, but
Right.
you have
Right.
some maladaptive behaviors, right? And
Mhm.
maybe the more we study, we'll find that is true. But I think there actually might be a few options. And
Cool.
that's why that values conversation is important. So I think you have found your ideal voice when two things are accomplished, or your
Mhm.
authentic voice. Number
Mhm.
one, it doesn't clash with your values. And number two, it is sustainable, meaning it doesn't hurt you. You can do it infinite amount of time. I think if the
Nice.
voice is sustainable and it's in line with your values, then you found and you like it, you found your authentic voice.
That is the most beautiful way to look at that. I'm just obsessed with that right now. I can't even think. I'm like,
Yeah, I just think there's
again,
a lot of
simple.
that. Yeah, I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
that idea that, well, again, you have your voice, but your
Yeah.
voice is made by a system that is very in flux. And so it's not like you have your arm
Mhm.
and you've broken it, so we need to set it back because the arm
Mhm.
is not a fluid thing. It's a bone,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And that's just
Uh-huh.
it is what it is. But
Mhm.
the voice has expression to it and it has
Yes.
movement to it
Yeah.
that most of our other body parts don't. I'm trying to think of an analogy. Your
No,
eye.
it's good.
My eyes
Yeah.
need to be this open. Can they be this open? Can they be this open? I think I have options. So,
Yeah.
what's your
Yeah.
authentic eye-opening level? I think you
Yeah.
have a choice.
Oh, I love that because I just had a conversation a few months back with a sociolinguist and I asked her like what is our voice? Like we have different voices in different settings. Is that the norm? And she said, "Yes, you don't talk to your grandparents the same way as your BFF. Like you might, but you might use different language and you might use different tone and you might, and that's not you being inauthentic. We're also worried. I get it. We're worried about being inauthentic in this world, so we just stay the same, right? Or so um tonal play I wanted to get to, but first I want to hit on, the sustainability part of the voice. So if
Mhm.
you're if we're losing our voice a lot, something's going awry. That's a
Yeah,
key sign that something's going awry.
yeah.
So what are some of the ways that you see clients losing their voice and correct that misguidance, if you will? But also too, I want to throw a quote at you. I saw in a book I was reading from a very famous celebrity vocal coach who will not be named that the voice was designed to work 24/7 without any issues. So I want to hear your thoughts about that as well as the issues you're seeing and how they're corrected.
Yeah. To your first point about if the voice is having an issue,
Mhm.
there's something going awry.
Mhm.
Go back to our start of the conversation today. How does the voice work? And identify which stage along the way is the breakdown. And it can be more than one stage. But at
Mhm.
which stage is the breakdown? Are we not supplying the adequate breath, or are we doing a type of breathing that is inefficient? Are we not getting
Mm.
good vocal cord closure? Is our resonance not conducive to the sound we're looking for? Are we having an articulation problem? Are there tension spots in any of this work? Because when the system is all calibrated correctly, this is
Mhm.
your second point, you can use it pretty much 24/7. I will That's one of those ideas that I think is true in textbook, not
Yes.
entirely true in theory, in practice rather. It is true that if you were using a perfectly calibrated system all the time,
Yes.
you wouldn't ever lose your voice.
Mhm.
As I communicate, unless I'm sick, I don't lose my voice.
Mhm.
I talk all day long. That is true. That being
Mhm.
said, every body part needs rest. And I know I'm
Mhm.
sick, but the phrase 24/7, you do need to go to bed, right? And you
Yeah,
do,
you do.
and
Yeah.
no body part can sustain something forever. Even if
Yeah.
I had some sort of device attached to me that could enable me to make a voice vibration without having to take a breath again,
Mhm.
eventually there would be fatigue. There just has to be.
Yeah.
But the premise of you should never have to lose your voice from speaking or singing, fully agree.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of, people that aren't involved in vocally driven careers, and I use quotes because school teachers losing their voice all the time, that doesn't need to be, but
Yeah.
they don't a lot of them maybe don't think about, "Well, I could go and see a vocal coach about that," because it's just not the connection is not there.
Yes.
Sometimes people think vocal coaching is simply for public speakers and actors and singers, and Broadway people,
And this
so
the
yeah, go ahead.
responsibility for us, which is
Yeah,
advocacy,
yeah.
because a lot of people come to us because they recognize they are professional voice users. I'm a singer,
Mhm.
I'm a public speaker, I'm an auctioneer, right? I'm a professional voice user. And
Yeah.
so many other people don't realize they are professional voice users. And you
Yeah.
mentioned teachers. My goodness, the number of teachers who need some assistance because their voice might be authentic, but it's not sustainable.
No.
They're destroying their voices.
Yeah.
And I don't say that to be
Mhm.
dramatic. I just say
Mhm.
they're in pain and they're not able to communicate the way they want to. And it's
Mhm.
affecting their passion, which
Yep.
is to teach. And so it's recognizing these different communities and trying to tell them like, "Hey, there's help." And
Yeah.
perhaps it's not even the specific communities, but just recognizing that our fields need to be something people are more aware of.
Yeah, there's a lot of barriers to this service for the people that need it, and that's one of them, and the other one is, well, I don't wanna sound like a used car salesperson. I don't wanna sound like I'm, "Hey there, what's going on?"
Yeah.
Very inauthentic, and to that, what would you say to those folks that about the work that you're doing and what actually the end result is that you're going for?
Yeah. 2 things. 1, it comes back to the whole conversation about authenticity.
Yeah.
Secondly, I apologize, it's 3 things.
Yeah,
Secondly,
yeah.
the ability to allow yourself to go in those directions for some time. I mentioned,
Mhm,
"Let's go the loudest you possibly can. Let's actually show you what you're afraid of," right? Let's
mhm,
go there because we need to
mhm,
learn those extremes to get to the in-betweens.
mhm.
So that's another piece of it here. But then I think that I often will say to people, "Okay, do I sound like that salesman? Do I sound like a robot to you?" Like, "No, you sound like a normal human being." Exactly. And
Right,
I'm able to communicate in a way that I'm not losing
right.
my voice, that I feel authentic,
Yeah.
and yet I still am able in my communication to have those professional expectations being realized. Let's be
Mhm,
honest, there are the personal authenticity concerns, and there's professional expectations as well. And can
mhm.
you marry those 2 together? Which, if I could detour for 1 second, when
Do.
you mentioned that you speak differently to your grandma than you do someone at work,
Yeah,
that's another piece of this authenticity, recognizing
yeah.
that we are not static beings, and
Yes.
that the way I am with my parents versus the way I am with coworkers are just different layers of the
Mhm.
onion that is Brendan, right?
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just yeah, it is so much compassion because I was one of those people too that, for me, the disconnect was I had this amazingly huge singing voice and a tiny, tiny mumbly speaking
Mm,
voice, and I went one day, finally, I went, "Huh, why is that? Why can't
yeah,
I be loud when I speak, but I
yeah,
can pump it out when I'm singing. Okay, something's gone wrong." And we're taught to think of them so separately. So I want to take a second here and remind folks that singing and speaking happens from the same instrument,
same
right?
too.
So what can you add to that? How different is it? Is it like walking to running or what is in your philosophy, what is it? How are they
Yeah,
connected?
before I answer that, and you can
Mhm.
tell me no if you like, but I'm curious if you could unpack a little bit. You had that realization. I'm
Yeah.
curious what you learned, if you've come to the answer yet, of why is my speaking voice this way and my singing voice another, if you're comfortable.
Oh, it's the emotional side of things. It definitely is. So, a couple of things. One of them is my favorite singers in the world had teeny tiny speaking voices.
Yeah,
Michael Jackson for I mean, he had this, like,
yeah.
go get 'em, like, singing, and then his speaking voice was like this.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, "Okay, well, that's just okay, maybe that's how it works." And, Christina Aguilera for a while had a really tiny, tiny speaking voice, but a huge voice. And
Yeah,
so I was, "Okay, well, I guess that's how it works." Um, and then you start seeing people like Sarah Bareilles, who's even keel, and, tons of people. And you go, "Hmm." You need that piece of evidence to realize, "Ooh, that limitation I put on myself, not necessary. Not
yeah.
necessary. Okay, okay, okay." So then it becomes, I just had that realization of, well, if I can do it in one and it's all the
Mhm.
same instrument, can I do it in the other? And so, yes, but then all the emotional stuff about your speaking voice and what you're allowed to do in this life came up for me. And that's what made me so obsessed with teaching in this way is that
Mhm.
it wasn't just as simple as breath and vocal cords and
Yeah.
it was like almost a real danger to be loud in
Yeah.
my speaking. My singing voice, I had no thoughts about as a kid because I was a quiet kid who never sang. So this was later in life but you know what I mean? So all of the above. All of that's my long answer. All of the above. So I'm
Alright.
curious what your experience was with it. Mhm.
Specifically with these 2 distinctions of the
Yeah, because you've done both.
yeah.
You do both. So what can you share?
Yeah, for me, we mentioned these life experiences. I think that I
Mhm.
was encouraged to make noise. I think I was encouraged.
Ah.
We were allowed to play music in the house growing up, and we were allowed to
Wow.
join the choir and join the plays and
Oh,
start a
cool.
band, and I think
Yeah.
that I was allowed to do that. My issue was that I was hurting myself singing and speaking. I had some this is one of the reasons I got into voice therapy and speech pathology is that I
Mhm.
incurred some vocal injuries myself. And so
Mhm.
that was my real issue was how do I sustain this? Because I'm hurting myself singing and
Yeah.
it's sometimes carrying over into speaking. What's going on here?
Mhm.
For me, it was more of the health piece of it as opposed to the psychological concern. However, I did
Yes.
have some of those concerns in that I did change some elements about my voice. They weren't really volume based, but they were
Mhm.
more I come from Long Island, New York, and if you
Nice.
heard me a few years ago, it might have been Long Island, New York, a little more
Cute.
of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I've made some adjustments to that. Not that there's
Great.
anything wrong with having a New York dialect, but it
No.
wasn't something I felt I identified with necessarily. And
Right.
so those are the things I changed,
Oh,
and
cool.
they tend not to be present in your singing voice. So that was taking singing over a little bit, which
Oh,
is
neat. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, one and the same instrument. So I wanna be mindful of your time, and I really wanna get to the topic of tone and how it's okay to play with tone, especially if you're an artist. Whether you're a voiceover artist or, you do, voices for cartoons or you do, music, you wanna have different tones. We're not talking about, get rid of all these tones that aren't your authentic sound. No. Find
Yeah.
that authentic sound, that open, pure match with your, values sound, and then play. Play with it. So I wonder if you could give us a couple. I'm putting you on the spot. A couple examples of how folks can play with tone, we all hear your authentic speaking voice, and it's beautiful, and you can do impressions as well by playing with your instrument. So what can share
That is
us a
that
couple
is
of them and just see? Yeah.
yeah. First, though, just on that topic, I get why we think that way. I do. And I
Yeah.
understand the voice is different than other things. I
Yeah.
do. But we don't think that way for music. Well,
Right.
pop is my authentic style. That's all I can do. And I'll never ever do rock because I just don't have the rock gene. Now, I
Right?
just don't think we typically think that way. We think I
No.
can listen to rock music if I want to. And
Yep.
so with the voice, I say you have to play. You have to play and you have to be willing to make some really ugly sounds. In fact, I think the ugliest sounds are some of the fun ones. And
Yes, they
so
are.
when you talk about impressions or sounds, not a shameless plug, but there's voice breakdown with our show
So
on
good, it's so good. I'll plug that. It's so good.
thank you. And I say that though because in that show, we talk
Yeah.
about the different elements of your voice that you can change. We talk about the
Mhm,
vocal cords themselves. We talk about the larynx, the tongue, the soft palate, and some other factors in there as well.
mhm.
And as you do that, you can shift things. So one of my favorite things to do, because I think this is if I just deepen the voice a little bit, you go, "It still sounds like Brendan." I'm hearing a little bit different quality, but wow, it's
Yes.
not some crazy thing. It just goes
Yeah.
from about here to about here, and you're like, "Okay, fine. That's not a voice impressionist. That's not a master of voice impressions, right?"
No.
But I think one of the coolest things that can really change that quality so quickly, and this can be a challenge to do, but is what we do with the back of the tongue.
Ooh.
If we clench that back of the tongue,
Mhm.
you get this kind of bubbly sound. Sounds a little bit like this, right? And as
Yeah.
for that bubble, what's great about that is once you have the bubble, the clench of the tongue, it's almost like I'm clenching my bicep, but with the
Yeah.
back of the tongue. Then you've actually opened up 10,000 voices because this is my normal voice, and
Yeah.
now I'm going to do it with just the tongue clench and not change anything else. Now it sounds a bit like this. I will change anything else, just the tongue. But now, why don't we do some high pitch stuff too?
Yes.
Why don't we do some falsetto? And now it sounds like this, right? So this is kind of like an Elmo. Emesis, hello. Right? We have that sort of
What?
higher pitch with that. And
Yeah.
then there's that bright thing I did in the laugh there, which is very similar to like a Yoshi from Nintendo.
Yeah.
Right?
What?
That's giving that tighter vocal cord connection, but still
Yeah.
a higher falsetto head voice range with the tongue clench. Now you can go the
Wow.
opposite direction, keep that tongue clench, but lower that pitch, and you'll get like a Ray Romano, like a "No, why, hey," that sort of thing, or a Fozzie Bear, "Oh, wagga wagga," right? So it's just that tongue clench alone.
Wow.
If you keep it more neutral and really squeeze things off, you get more of a Gollum Smeagol from Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Right? But there, I have a little bit of breathiness too. So breathy and tongue clench becomes this my precious. That's that sound. So the
I
tongue
love this.
is just the most able to make it sound like you're actually doing something different, right?
Wow.
None of those sound like Brendan.
And let's be clear to everybody listening. It's okay to be breathy on
Yeah,
purpose.
yeah, yeah.
What we're talking about is just making sure your everyday voice is working essentially for you, not against you,
Well,
right?
that's a
And
good
then you can
point.
do all the
These are
Gollum you
just
want.
yeah, yeah. These are just colors, right?
Yeah.
And with tongue clench, people have varying degrees of that. I use the Ray
Okay.
Romano example just because there's a significant amount there, but
Yeah.
it's worked for Ray Romano. It's his
Yes.
big sound,
What
right?
about the Shakira? Is that this?
Yeah,
Is
she has a
that
little bit too. La, 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 la. There's a little bit of that
Ah.
going on there, yeah. A little bit of that going on, yeah. Obviously, a different octave
Oh.
there, but yeah.
So,
So, yeah,
I love that. So, what are your thoughts on someone like Shakira, let's just unpack that real quickly, that has the tongue clench,
yeah.
that sings on the regular with the tongue clench. Is there any vocally health issues that might come up with that, or is
Seems to be
this
working
is
for
totally
her.
okay? Yeah,
Seems to be working for her. She's the queen.
right?
Seems to be working for her. Yeah, I think
Leave it
that
be.
yeah, and that's the thing to note about this.
Yeah.
Some things are going to negatively impact people because of the way they're doing it, and for some people, it won't matter at all.
Wow.
It'll affect the sound, everything affects the
Yeah,
sound,
yeah,
but you can get by. And other people, they're doing that, and there's so much excess tension that they're causing because of that, that
yeah.
it's giving them that muscle tension dysphonia. But it's working for
Wow.
her. And she also, if you really listen, releases it many times too. So when she's
Yeah,
in that area, she has it. But
yeah,
then I hear many moments where she really releases that. There's other
yeah.
moments where she goes into a vocal fry. There's a lot of these other
Yes.
colors she has
Yeah.
because she's fantastic.
Well, and it makes it so interesting. Another singer that comes up for me is Jewel. She does a
Yeah,
lot of different voices, from
yeah.
sounding like she's 7 to the Shakira sound to this huge soulful voice, and you're just
Oh
like,
yeah.
"Whoa!" And that's play is okay.
Play is great. And in fact, I'm gonna push against the norm a little bit
Do
here.
it.
I think that there is a real conception of what good singing is.
Mhm.
And that conception of good singing has hindered people from being able to play. And the irony is, if you want that quote good singing, you actually need to make all these ugly sounds first to find it. But even still, I just want to get rid of that conception of this is a good voice and this is not. I think
Yes.
that sure, this person might have more control, this person might have more versatility, more consistency. I like their sound better. That's cool. But
Mhm.
I love colors. And the music that I enjoy most, well, when it comes to music, I enjoy having a more eclectic mix. But some
Mhm.
of the artists I love listening to, I tend to like a lot more experimental music, sometimes a lot of heavier music, and a
Yeah.
lot of traditional folks hear that and think this is just noise. And I go, no, listen to the vocal chameleon job that this person is doing, because a lot of these more, again, experimental bands will do 40 different voices on an album, as
Yeah.
opposed to the one pop voice you hear for 12 3.5 minute tracks. That's exactly the same, right? As beautiful
Oh,
as that is, I
yeah.
love colors.
The colors keep you interested, it perks the ears up, right? There
Yes.
is so much left to talk to you about, so I'm gonna call it, we need a part 2 down the road, okay? But
Bring me back.
one of the things I know, I wanted to talk to you about vocal distortion, but I think we'll save that one, because what I really want people to get is, what does it take to maintain this voice? Is it vocal health tips that you can share? Is it a warm up, a daily warm up? We have about 3 or 4 minutes here, so before you
Yeah.
have to go, what can you share with us about that?
First off, another shameless plug on Justin's
Nice.
channel on New York Vocal Coaching. They
Yeah.
just started a vocal distortion series.
Oh, brilliant.
So
Done
for
and done.
everybody who's watching
I'll
this or
put a
will be
link to the
watching,
show notes. Yeah.
yeah, check that out because it's phenomenal. And
Awesome.
obviously, Justin's the best. So you
He is
guys,
the best. We know. But so are you. So
yeah,
we're all the best.
and our colleague Nicholas is on there too. Just
Oh,
phenomenal.
cool. All
The
right. I'll
distortion
check that out.
expert. Phenomenal, phenomenal. That's the
Yeah.
first piece. The second piece about how to maintain that.
Mhm.
Obviously, getting with a coach to learn all about the ins and outs is helpful, but it really comes down to, are you using that system that we established in the beginning? Are you
Mhm.
using it efficiently? And are you doing all 4 stages in a way that is healthy or healthy enough that it doesn't
Mhm.
cause any adverse health effects for you? Now, warm-ups are great.
Mhm.
Warm-ups are great. You can find those anywhere, find them on our channel, of course. But even more important than a warm-up is technique. So,
Nice.
do I warm up my voice every day? Yes. Big fan of lip trills. They tend to calibrate me, recalibrate me. I enjoy that my voice feels after them. But the most important thing is, do you know how to use your voice efficiently? That's more important. No amount of warming up will help you if you are still using it in an injurious way. It's kind of like I'm going to stretch and then I'm
Mhm.
going to jump off a building. Like it's still going to hurt, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
I love that you said that because that is uh, a lot of folks just want a one and done quick and then stay
doesn't work
and
that way.
again, lots of compassion. I get it. If I do this 2-minute warm up, I'm fine for the rest of the day. Maybe. Yeah, could be. You'll be warmed up, but like you said, if your habits counter the good work that that warm up did, or you're just solidifying those habits through your warm up,
Exactly.
you've just kinda wasted 2 minutes. In a
You're
way, yeah. We d morning voice, let's just go there real quick. What is happening and what are some things people because you don't have to live with it all day, right?
right.
So what is happening and what can we do about it
Mhm.
like, real quick?
Yeah, sometimes it is just a matter of the vocal system needing to be stretched and turned on
Mhm,
a little bit because just like anything, right? When you wake up, you're a little tight, you blade a certain way. That's
mhm.
all normal. Other times, though, and I say this not to scare folks, and this is overdiagnosed, but it's a genuine real thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's an acid reflux thing happening at night, and you
Mhm.
the voice, and then throughout the course of the day, that inflammation goes down, and then you just redo it at night. And so that's an issue. And so I recommend everyone seeing an ENT to make sure that's not going on.
Yes.
It is overdiagnosed, but it is a very, very real thing that happens very frequently. I've suffered
Yeah.
from it myself. And
Mhm.
so that's another piece that
Yeah.
people
I love that you brought that up. There's so much in vocal health that, there's always exceptions to the rules, right? It's not one warm up for everyone and you're done. Yeah. It's really getting in tune with your own unique voice, and your body and
and being
just figuring it
patient with
out.
your journey, being patient that it might take some time to figure
Yeah.
out what's going
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you're a genius. Thank you so much, Brendan. I'm going to be mindful of your time. So I just want to tell people where to find you, newyorkspeechcoaching.com and Facebook, and all these jazz here. YouTube series though, the voice breakdown. I love that one. So if you search even just voice breakdown, you'll find it and it's phenomenal and it will unpack a lot more of what we talked about today. Anything else you want to share with us, Brendan?
I just wanna
From
thank you. I just wanna thank
Oh,
you for the
thank
time,
you.
Jill. Truly a pleasure.
Oh,
As we said
well,
many times, I would love to just talk about this for hours. So thank you for giving me an
careful,
hour.
because I'll have you back again and again. We'll talk about all these things.
Not a threat.
Okay,
Not a threat at all. I'm
it's a
happy
day.
to.
Okay, I'm in. So thank you so, so, so much. And I know you gotta go. So I will do the closing and we'll thank you again for being here.
All right. Bye. Thank you. Bye,
Bye
everyone.
now. Bye. Wasn't that fun? Like, oh, I have about 15,000 other questions that I really want to ask, but today we're out of time. So please send your questions to me if you ever have any questions that you don't feel confident asking on air. I'm always available at voxsana.co. You can send me an email from the website there. All my contact is there. I'm also on Facebook, voxsana.co, and eventually I'll get on other platforms. I keep saying that, but eventually that will happen. But that was Brendan from New York Speech Coaching, Brendan Houdek, and amazing conversation. And stay tuned because we have a few more really super fun. Let me just pull up the listing here because it's right on my channel. We have yes, Nicole Lewis Keeber is a therapist and mindset coach on February 20th. Frank McGuire, the radio host that we talked to last year, is back to talk about the ins and outs of owning your own radio station and how to do that. And then on March 6th, we have David Darlington, record producer and engineer. And yes, he's worked with Sting, he's worked with Whitney Houston. It is going to be epic. So that's March 6th. So thank you so much for watching. And yeah, I will catch you soon. Cheers.